5 years ago, I made a decision that shattered my entire world but saved what was left of my sanity. I walked away from a life I had built with the woman I thought I would grow old with. Her name was Amanda, and she wasn't just my wife. She was the love of my life, or so I thought. But when you find out the person you trust most is capable of stabbing you in the back, you stop believing in fairy tales. And Amanda? She didn't just stab me. She twisted the knife until there was nothing left. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I thought it was solid. We had our fights, sure, but nothing unusual. At least, that's what I told myself. I ignored the little cracks that had started to show. The late-night work meetings, the sudden gym membership, the way her phone never left her hand. Looking back, it was all so obvious, but love blinds you to the truth. The truth hit me in the face one ordinary evening. I came home early from work with Chinese takeout, hoping to surprise her. Instead, I walked into the house and heard laughter coming from upstairs, a man's laughter. My heart dropped. I wasn't naive. I knew what I was about to find. I climbed those stairs on autopilot, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I pushed open our bedroom door, there they were, Amanda, half-dressed, and some guy I didn't recognize. She didn't even bother to scream or cover herself. She just stared at me, her eyes wide, like she was surprised I had the nerve to walk into my own home. "Jason," she said, her voice calm, almost bored. "I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" I managed to choke out. "That you're screwing someone else in our bed?" "It's not what you think," she said, standing up and buttoning her shirt. "I need more. I need excitement. You've changed. You're boring." That was the moment something inside me broke. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked out of the house, leaving her and her lover standing there. 2 weeks later, our divorce was finalized. She got the house. I got my freedom. For 5 years, I avoided her like the plague. I built a new life for myself, a quiet, simple life. I moved to a different city, started a small woodworking business, and kept to myself. I didn't date. I didn't trust anyone enough to let them in. Amanda had taken that from me, or so I thought. Then one night, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to pick it up. "Hello," I said, my voice hesitant. "Jason? It's me, Amanda." I froze. Hearing her voice again was like reopening an old wound. I thought about hanging up, but before I could, she spoke again. "Please don't hang up," she said, her voice trembling. "I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to end the call, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Amanda?" I asked coldly. "It's about your father," she said, her voice breaking. "He's in trouble, Jason, and I think it's my fault." Her words hit me like a freight train. My father? Trouble? And somehow Amanda was involved? My mind raced with questions, but all I could manage was a stunned, "What the hell are you talking about?" "I can't explain over the phone," she said, her tone desperate. "Please, Jason, meet me. Just this once." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Something told me this wasn't just another one of Amanda's manipulations. This was bigger. And as much as I hated her, I had to know what she had done and why my father, Frank, was involved. I didn't know it then, but that phone call was about to pull me into a web of secrets, lies, and betrayals that would make everything Amanda had done before look like child's play. I spent the entire night tossing and turning after that call. Every memory of Amanda came flooding back. The lies, the betrayal, the way she had shattered me. And now, out of the blue, she was back, dragging my father into something that sounded like trouble. What could she possibly have done this time? My gut told me this wasn't going to be a simple conversation, but I needed answers. The next morning, I drove to the small cafe where Amanda had asked me to meet her. It was one of those places she used to love, trendy, overpriced, with too many types of lattes to count. As I parked, I felt a familiar mix of anger and anxiety bubbling up. I hadn't seen her in 5 years, and now I was about to face the person who had once ripped my life apart. I walked in, and there she was. Amanda hadn't changed much. Same perfect hair, same confident posture, the same air of superiority she always carried. But there was something else now, something I hadn't seen before, a crack in the mask. She looked nervous, almost fragile. "Jason," she said, standing as I approached. Her voice had a slight tremble, but she tried to hide it with a weak smile. "Amanda," I replied flatly, taking the seat across from her. "You've got 5 minutes. Start talking." She winced at my tone, but didn't protest. For once, she seemed almost humble. I'm sorry to drag you into this, she began, fidgeting with the cup of coffee in front of her. But I didn't know who else to turn to. You've got plenty of people in your corner, I snapped. Why not call Mark, or your new boyfriend, whoever he is? Her eyes darted away, and for a moment, I thought I saw shame flicker across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. This isn't about me, she said quietly. It's about your father. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You keep saying that, but you haven't explained a damn thing. What does my father have to do with you? She hesitated, looking down at her hands. I made a mistake, she finally said. A big one. No kidding, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Get to the point. She looked up, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Fear? Regret? Jason, I owe money. A lot of money. To dangerous people. I blinked, stunned. This wasn't what I was expecting. What the hell does that have to do with my father? I demanded. I borrowed from a guy, she continued, her voice shaking. Someone who isn't exactly forgiving. And when I couldn't pay him back, he started making threats. About me. About your father. My father, I nearly shouted, leaning forward. Why the hell would he threaten my father? What did you do, Amanda? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't buying it. She choked on her words, before finally blurting out. I told him your dad would cover the debt. It took a moment for her words to sink in. My chest tightened, and I felt my hands clench into fists. You what? You dragged my father into this mess because you couldn't keep your life together? I didn't have a choice, she pleaded. They were going to hurt me, Jason. I panicked. I thought your dad could handle it. He's a strong man. And you thought wrong. I snapped, cutting her off. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father, Frank, is in his 70s, Amanda. He's retired for God's sake. And you've just painted a target on his back. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Jason, I'm scared. These people aren't bluffing. They've already been to his house. My blood ran cold. They've what? They showed up last week, she admitted, her voice barely audible. They told him they'd give him 2 weeks to pay, or they come back. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. You're unbelievable, I growled. 5 years, Amanda. 5 years I've been trying to rebuild my life, and now you show up, dragging my family into your mess. I should walk away right now and let you deal with this on your own. Please, Jason, she sobbed, grabbing my arm. I know I don't deserve your help, but your father doesn't either. He's innocent in all this. I made the mistake, but he's the one who's going to pay for it. I can't live with that on my conscience. I yanked my arm free and glared at her. Don't you dare talk to me about conscience. I spat. You lost the right to ask for my help the day you betrayed me. But as I stormed out of the cafe, her words echoed in my mind. They've already been to his house. No matter how much I hated Amanda, no matter how much I wanted to leave her to deal with her own mess, I couldn't ignore the fact that my father was in danger. And whether I liked it or not, I knew I couldn't just walk away. I sat in my car outside the cafe for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing. Amanda's words were like a grenade that had gone off in my head. My father, Frank, was in danger because of her stupidity, her selfishness. I wanted to scream, to punch the steering wheel, to do anything to release the storm brewing inside me. But instead, I just sat there, paralyzed. The worst part was, she was right about one thing. My father didn't deserve this. The man had worked his entire life to give me a better future. He'd sacrificed everything, his time, his health, his own dreams, so that I could have mine. And now, in his retirement, when he should have been enjoying a quiet life, Amanda had dragged him into the nightmare she created. I couldn't let this slide. As much as I wanted to leave Amanda to deal with the mess she'd made, I knew I couldn't abandon my father. He didn't ask for this, and he damn well shouldn't have to pay for it. I dialed his number, my hand trembling as I held the phone to my ear. He picked up on the third ring. Jason. His voice was calm, steady, the same as always. It was comforting in a way, but it also made me feel sick. He didn't even know the full extent of what was happening. Dad, we need to talk, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Are you okay? Has anyone else been to your house? There was a pause. I'm fine, son, he said cautiously. Why are you asking? I hesitated. How much could I tell him without sending him into a panic? I heard something, I finally said. About someone threatening you. Is it true? Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. It's nothing to worry about, Jason. Just a misunderstanding. Don't lie to me, Dad. I snapped. Amanda told me everything. These people aren't bluffing, are they? There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he'd hung up. But then he sighed, the kind of deep, weary sigh that only comes from someone who's been carrying a heavy burden. No, he admitted. They're not bluffing. My stomach dropped. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Because you've been through enough, he said firmly. I didn't want to drag you into this. It's not your problem. Not my problem? I repeated, my voice rising. Dad, they showed up at your house. How can you say this isn't my problem? I can handle it, he insisted. I've dealt with worse in my time. You don't need to worry about me. But I did worry. How could I not? My father might have been tough in his younger years, but he wasn't invincible. And these weren't just some rowdy kids causing trouble. These were dangerous people. I'm coming over, I said firmly. We're going to figure this out together. Jason, I'm not arguing about this, Dad. I interrupted. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up before he could protest further and gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to steady my breathing. This was spiraling out of control faster than I could process. Amanda had unleashed chaos into my life once again, and now my father's safety was on the line. As I pulled out of the parking lot and started the drive to his house, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever Amanda had gotten herself into, it was bigger and far more dangerous than she let on. I wasn't just stepping into her mess. I was stepping into a storm. The drive to my father's house felt like an eternity. Every possible scenario played through my mind, each one worse than the last. I couldn't shake the image of my dad, a proud, stubborn man, being cornered by thugs because of Amanda's reckless decisions. The thought made my blood boil. When I pulled into the driveway, his old truck was parked in its usual spot. The house looked the same as ever, quiet and unassuming, like nothing had changed. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. I knocked on the door, and my dad opened it almost immediately. He looked the same, strong jaw, weathered hands. But his eyes gave him away. There was worry behind them, a kind of weariness I hadn't seen before. Come in, he said, stepping aside. His voice was calm, but I could tell he wasn't thrilled that I'd forced my way into this situation. We sat down in the living room, the old recliner creaking as he leaned back. I waited, hoping he'd be the first to speak, but he just stared at me, as if deciding how much to tell me. Dad, I finally said, breaking the silence, I need the truth. All of it. Amanda told me what happened, but I need to hear it from you. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. She wasn't lying, he admitted. A couple of guys showed up last week. They weren't polite about it, either. They said Amanda owes them money, and if she can't pay, they'll take it out of my hide instead. My fists clenched at his words. What did they do? I asked, my voice sharp. They didn't lay a hand on me, he said quickly. Just a lot of threats, a lot of posturing. But they made it clear they'd be back if the money wasn't paid. How much does she owe them? 50 grand. I let out a low whistle. $50,000. There was no way Amanda could come up with that kind of money on her own. She must have been desperate to think involving my dad was a solution. And you just let them walk away? I asked. What else could I do? He shot back. Fight them? Call the cops? You know how these types work, Jason. They don't scare easy, and they don't play fair. I couldn't argue with that. Still, the thought of those men threatening my father made my skin crawl. We need to figure this out, I said firmly. I'm not going to let them come back and do God knows what. I don't want you getting involved, he said, his tone stern. This isn't your mess to clean up. It became my mess the second Amanda dragged you into it. I countered. I can't just sit back and do nothing, Dad. He stared at me for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. All right, he said quietly. But we have to be smart about this. These guys aren't amateurs. That's when the doorbell rang. My dad froze, and my heart skipped a beat. He glanced at me, his expression tight. Stay here, he said, standing up. Like hell I'm staying here, I replied, following him to the door. He opened it cautiously, and sure enough, two men stood on the porch. They were exactly what I expected. Big, rough-looking, with faces that practically screamed trouble. The taller one grinned when he saw my dad. Good to see you again, old man, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. We thought we'd stop by and remind you about our little arrangement. My dad didn't flinch. I haven't forgotten, he said evenly. The shorter man's eyes flicked to me. Who's this? He asked, his tone suspicious. His son, I said before my dad could respond. And I'd like to know why you think threatening a retired man is a good idea. The taller guy laughed. He's got some fire, huh? He said to his partner. Then he turned back to me. This isn't personal, kid. It's just business. Your dad's on the hook because your ex-wife can't pay her debts. Maybe you should take it up with her. Oh, I plan to, I said, glaring at him. But first, you're going to tell me exactly what kind of deal Amanda made with you. The man's grin widened. That's between us and her, he said. All you need to know is, if we don't get our money, people start getting hurt. I stepped forward, my blood boiling. If you think for 1 second, Jason, don't, my dad interrupted, putting a hand on my shoulder. His voice was calm, but I could feel the tension in his grip. Let them say their piece. The taller man leaned in slightly, his grin fading. You've got a week, he said coldly. 50 grand, or we come back. And next time, we won't just be talking. With that, they turned and walked back to their car, leaving us standing there in silence. As their engine roared to life and they drove away, I turned to my dad. This isn't over, I said. We're going to fix this. But deep down, I knew the storm was only just beginning. The silence after they left was deafening. My father closed the door and turned to me, his expression grim but calm. That was his way, always steady, always in control. But I could see the cracks now, the weight of what had just happened etched into the lines on his face. We need a plan, I said, breaking the silence. This isn't something we can ignore, Dad. They're not going to back off. And what do you suggest, Jason? He replied, sinking into his recliner. We don't have 50 grand lying around. Even if we did, paying them off would just make us a target for the next time they want to cash in. He wasn't wrong. These weren't men you could reason with, and giving them money wouldn't end things. It would only delay the inevitable. But sitting around waiting for them to come back wasn't an option either. I'll figure something out, I said, pacing the room. There has to be a way to stop this. You're not going to confront them again, my dad said firmly. That'll just get you hurt, or worse. I'm not planning on picking a fight, I replied, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed myself. But I can't just sit here and do nothing. My dad leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Jason, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't your problem to solve. I'll handle it. Like hell you will. I shot back. You shouldn't have to handle this alone. You didn't ask for any of this. Amanda dragged you into it, and now it's on me to get you out. At the mention of Amanda, my dad's jaw tightened. He had never liked her, even back when we were married. He'd always said she was trouble, and he'd been right. But this was a whole new level of chaos, even for her. Have you talked to her? He asked after a moment. Does she have any kind of plan? I let out a bitter laugh. If Amanda had a plan, we wouldn't be in this mess. She called me because she's desperate and scared. That's about the extent of her involvement. Figures, he muttered, shaking his head. That woman has been a disaster since the day you met her. I didn't argue. There was no point. Amanda had burned every bridge she'd ever crossed, and now her recklessness had brought her to my father's doorstep. But I couldn't focus on my anger toward her, not now. I needed to think clearly. I needed to find a solution. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Amanda. She answered on the first ring. Jason, she said, her voice tinged with hope. Did you talk to your dad? I did, I said, my tone flat. And you left out a lot of details, Amanda. What exactly did you get yourself into? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I told you. I borrowed money, she said quietly. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could pay it back before. Before what? I snapped. Before they showed up at my dad's house and threatened him? I didn't know they'd go after him, she protested, her voice rising. I thought they'd come after me. That doesn't make it better, Amanda, I said through gritted teeth. You've put him in danger, and now you expect me to clean up your mess? I didn't know who else to call, she said, her voice breaking. Jason, please, I'm scared. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the way she had looked at me 5 years ago, unapologetic as she tore my life apart. Whatever sympathy I had for her now was overshadowed by the mountain of resentment I still carried. Tell me everything, I said coldly. No more lies, no more half-truths. Who did you borrow from and what? There was another pause, longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. His name is Victor, she said. He runs things. Loans, gambling, you name it. I was in trouble, Jason. I owed money from other debts. He was my only option. And now he's our problem, I said bitterly. What exactly do you expect me to do, Amanda? Pull 50 grand out of thin air? I don't know, she admitted, her voice cracking. But I know you. You're smart. You always figure things out. Her words felt like a slap in the face. She had torn me apart, left me to pick up the pieces of my life. And now she had the audacity to call me smart and expect me to fix her problems. I'll call you if I have any updates, I said, ending the conversation before she could say anything else. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts about my father, about Amanda, about the men who had shown up at his house. I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to end until I made it end. I pulled out my laptop and started digging. If Victor was the man Amanda described, there had to be something I could use to turn the tables. I didn't have 50 grand, but maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to make him back off without it. I stayed up until dawn, searching for anything that could give me leverage against Victor. The guy was as shady as they came. Loan shark, gambling ring operator, and rumor had it, tied to some serious organized crime. Every search result painted a clearer picture of just how dangerous he was. People who crossed him didn't just lose money, they disappeared. But the deeper I dug, the more one detail stood out. Victor wasn't invincible. He'd been arrested once, about a decade ago, for tax evasion. It didn't stick, thanks to some expensive lawyers, but it told me one important thing. He wasn't immune to pressure. If I could find a way to expose him, maybe I could force him to back off. By the time the sun came up, I had a rough plan. It wasn't foolproof, and it sure as hell wasn't safe, but it was all I had. I just needed to figure out where to start. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Amanda. What now? I muttered, answering reluctantly. Jason, she said, her voice frantic. They called me. Who? Victor's men, she replied. They said they know you're involved now. They're angry you confronted them at your dad's house. They said you're making things worse. My heart sank. Of course, they'd figured that out. These guys weren't stupid. They probably had someone watching the house. What else did they say? I asked, keeping my voice steady. They're coming for me, Jason, she said, panic evident in her tone. They said if the money isn't paid by the end of the week, they'll make an example out of me and your dad. I gripped the phone tightly, anger surging through me. So now you're worried? Maybe you should have thought about that before dragging him into this. I know, okay, she cried. I screwed up, but I don't know what to do. Please, Jason, you're the only one who can help. I wanted to hang up. Every fiber of my being told me to let her deal with the fallout of her own decisions. But the image of my dad, his calm, weathered face masking the fear he must have been feeling, stopped me. I'll handle it, I said finally. But don't call me again unless you have something useful to tell me. I hung up before she could respond, slamming the phone down on the table. This was spiraling out of control faster than I'd anticipated. If Victor's men were already watching us, I didn't have much time to figure this out. Later that day, I drove back to my dad's house. I couldn't let him out of my sight, not with everything going on. When I got there, he was in the backyard, tending to the garden he'd been cultivating for years. He looked up as I approached, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Didn't expect to see you again so soon, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. I'm staying here for a while, I replied, my tone leaving no room for argument. If these guys come back, I want to be here. He frowned, but didn't protest. Best you don't have to do this, Jason, he said quietly. You've already given up enough because of her. It's not about Amanda, I said firmly. It's about you. And I'm not letting anything happen to you because of her stupidity. He nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. All right, he said. But if you're staying, we need to be smart about this. These men aren't the kind you can scare off with tough talk. I know, I said, sitting down beside him. I have an idea, but it's risky. He raised an eyebrow. What kind of idea? I'm going to dig into Victor, I explained. He's not as untouchable as he thinks. If we can find something on him, something big, we might be able to make him back off. My dad didn't look convinced. And how exactly are you planning to do that? I've already started, I said. There's a guy I know, an old friend from college, Tyler. He's good with computers, real good. If anyone can find dirt on Victor, it's him. My dad let out a heavy sigh. You're playing with fire, Jason. I don't have a choice, I said. If we don't fight back, they'll keep coming. I won't let that happen. He didn't say anything else, but the look in his eyes told me he understood. That night, I called my old friend Tyler. We hadn't spoken in years, but I knew he'd help me. He owed me a favor, and I was finally cashing it in. "Jason," he said when he picked up. "Man, it's been a while." "Yeah, it has," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "I need your help, Ty." "It's serious." "Serious how?" he asked, his tone immediately shifting. "I need you to dig into someone," I said, "a guy named Victor. He's bad news, and I need leverage. Anything you can find, financials, criminal activity, skeletons in his closet, whatever you can get." Tyler let out a low whistle. "Sounds heavy. What's he done?" "It's a long story," I replied. "Let's just say he's threatening my family, and I'm running out of time." There was a pause, and then he said, "All right, I'll see what I can do. Give me a couple of days." "Thanks, Ty," I said, relief washing over me. "I owe you one." "You owe me a beer," he said with a chuckle. "But seriously, Jason, be careful. Guys like this don't play fair." "I know," I said. "Just find me something I can use." As I hung up, I felt a small flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. If Tyler could find anything on Victor, it might be the edge I needed. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get a lot worse before they got better. The next day, I kept my phone within arm's reach, waiting for Tyler to call. Every buzz made my heart jump, but none of the notifications were from him. The tension was unbearable. I couldn't sit still, couldn't focus on anything. My dad, Frank, on the other hand, seemed eerily calm. He spent most of the morning in his garden, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Why aren't you more worried?" I asked him, pacing back and forth on the porch. He wiped dirt off his hands and gave me a small, knowing smile. "Worrying won't solve anything, son. We'll handle this one step at a time." His calmness annoyed me, but I knew it came from years of facing hardships head-on. My dad had always been a pillar of strength, and now it was my turn to step up. By mid-afternoon, Tyler finally called. I answered so fast I nearly dropped the phone. "Tyler, tell me you've got something." "I've got a lot," he said, his voice low and serious. "Your guy, Victor, he's running more than just loan scams and gambling rings. He's laundering money through a bunch of small businesses in your area. If the feds knew about this, they'd shut him down in a heartbeat." "Are you sure?" I asked, feeling a spark of hope. "Positive," he said. "I hacked into some of his financial records, don't ask how, and it's all there. Fake invoices, shell companies, the works. This guy's a walking indictment." I sat down on the porch steps, my mind racing. "If we report this, will it be enough to get him off our backs?" "It should," Tyler replied. "But you'll need to be careful. If Victor finds out you tipped off the authorities, he'll come after you. Guys like him don't forgive and forget." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thanks, Ty. You've done more than enough. Just don't get yourself killed," he said with a nervous laugh. "And let me know how it goes." I hung up and stared at the ground, my heart pounding. I had the information I needed to take Victor down. But Tyler was right. This was dangerous. If I made the wrong move, it wouldn't just be my dad in danger, it'd be me too. That evening, I told my dad what Tyler had found. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. "So, what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "I report him anonymously," I said. "The feds investigate, and Victor has bigger problems to deal with. Hopefully, that'll keep him off our backs." My dad frowned. "And if it doesn't? What if he finds out you're the one who tipped them off?" "I'll deal with it," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "I'm not letting this guy run our lives, Dad. Not anymore." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right," he said. "But if this goes south, we face it together." His words gave me strength, even as doubt crept into my mind. This plan was risky, but it was the only shot we had. The next day, I made the call, using a burner phone Tyler had sent me. I contacted the local FBI office and gave them the details. I kept it brief, just enough to point them in the right direction. When they asked for my name, I hung up. It was done. Now all I could do was wait. The waiting was excruciating. Every sound outside made me jump. A car engine, footsteps on the porch, even the wind brushing against the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that Victor already knew what I'd done, that he was going to show up with his goons and end this the hard way. But nothing happened that day, or the next. It was almost worse, the silence, the not knowing. My dad kept busy, tinkering around the house, but I could tell he was on edge too. He tried to hide it, but the way he checked the windows and locked the doors more often gave him away. On the third day, I finally got a call. This time, it wasn't from Tyler or Amanda. It was a number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped as I picked up, half expecting Victor's voice on the other end. "This is Jason," I said cautiously. "Mr. Miller, this is Agent Turner with the FBI," a deep voice replied. "We received an anonymous tip about Victor Salazar, and we've already started an investigation. I can't share many details, but I wanted to confirm that the information provided was credible." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. "So you're moving on this?" I asked. "We are," Agent Turner said. "But I have to warn you. People like Victor don't go down quietly. If he suspects someone close to him tipped us off, things could get dangerous. Be careful, Mr. Miller." "Understood," I replied, my throat dry. "Thanks for letting me know." As I hung up, the relief was quickly replaced by anxiety. The FBI was on it, but it wasn't over yet. Victor wasn't going to sit around and wait to be taken down. If he started suspecting people, it wouldn't take long for him to connect the dots. That evening, I got another call, this time from Amanda. I almost ignored it, but decided to pick up, dreading whatever drama she was about to unload. "Jason," she said, her voice trembling. "Something's happened." "What now?" I asked, exhaustion clear in my tone. "They know," she whispered. "Victor knows someone tipped off the feds. He's furious, Jason. He's looking for whoever did it." My heart skipped a beat. "How do you know?" "One of his guys came to see me," she said. "He said Victor thinks it might be you. He's sending someone to your dad's house." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "You're just telling me this now?" I snapped. "When did this happen?" "An hour ago," she said, sobbing. I was too scared to call. I didn't know what to do. I hung up without another word and ran to find my dad. He was in the kitchen, pouring himself a cup of coffee, looking far too calm for what I was about to tell him. "Dad, we need to leave," I said, grabbing his arm. "What are you talking about?" he asked, startled. "Victor knows. He thinks I tipped off the feds, and he's sending someone here." My dad's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw real fear in them. But he didn't panic. "All right," he said, setting his coffee down. "Let's go." We grabbed the essentials, wallets, phones, keys, and headed out the back door. As we got into my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I scanned the street, my heart pounding, but there was no sign of anyone. "Where are we going?" my dad asked as I started the engine. "Someplace safe," I said, pulling out of the driveway. "We just need to lay low until this blows over." But as I drove, a pair of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just another car, but when I turned onto a side street and the car followed, my stomach dropped. "Jason," my dad said, his voice tense. "I think we've got company." I tightened my grip on the wheel, my mind racing. Whoever was behind us wasn't going to let this end quietly. "Hold on, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "This isn't over yet." The car's headlights loomed closer in the rearview mirror, their bright beams cutting through the dark street like knives. My pulse quickened as I gripped the steering wheel, trying to think of my next move. Victor's men weren't going to let us slip away quietly. My dad sat next to me, his jaw tight, but his demeanor calm. "They're not going to stop," I muttered, more to myself than him. "Then don't give them a reason to," he said. "Find a safe place. Somewhere public." I scanned the road ahead, spotting a brightly lit gas station. Without hesitation, I turned sharply into the lot and parked near the entrance, where the overhead lights illuminated the area. The car following us rolled in a moment later, stopping a few spaces away. Two men stepped out, their dark silhouettes moving toward us. "Stay in the car," I told my dad as I opened the door. "No way," he replied, following me out. "If this goes sideways, we face it together." The two men approached, their faces partially hidden by shadows. One of them, the shorter, stockier guy, had been at my dad's house before. He sneered as he recognized me. "Jason Miller," he said mockingly. "You're making quite a name for yourself. What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You know what we want," he said, taking a step closer. "Victor doesn't like snitches. And you've been squealing to the wrong people." My dad stepped forward, his shoulders squared. "You've got a problem. You deal with me," he said firmly. "Leave my son out of this." The man's smirk widened. "Touching. But this isn't about him. Or you, old man. It's about. Before he could finish, the wail of sirens cut through the tension. Red and blue lights flashed across the lot as two police cruisers pulled in. The men froze, their expressions shifting from confidence to panic. Behind the cruisers, a black SUV rolled up, and Agent Turner stepped out. "Gentlemen," Turner said, his tone calm but authoritative, "you're done." The officers quickly moved in, handcuffing the two men while Turner approached me. "Jason," he said, nodding in acknowledgement, "good work. The tip you gave us led to enough evidence to bring Victor down. We've got him and most of his crew in custody." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "So it's over?" Turner nodded. "For the most part. These two were probably sent to intimidate you, but they'll be spending the night in jail, and a lot more after that." As the officers escorted the men to the cruisers, one of them shot me a glare. "This isn't over," he growled. "It's over," Turner corrected. "We've got everything we need. All of Victor's operations, loans, laundering, threats, they're documented, and the case is airtight. He's going away for a long time." Relief washed over me as Turner's words sank in. The nightmare Amanda had dragged us into was finally coming to an end. My dad put a hand on my shoulder, his grip steady and reassuring. "You did good, son," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you." For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The storm was over. 2 weeks later, Amanda called. I debated answering, but decided to pick up, if only to close this chapter once and for all. "Jason," she said, her voice softer than usual. "I heard what happened. You saved me and your dad." "Thank you. I didn't do it for you," I replied coldly. "And don't call me again, Amanda. This is the last time we speak." There was silence on the other end before she whispered, "I'm sorry." But her apology didn't matter anymore. I hung up and blocked her number for good. Life slowly returned to normal after that. My dad and I repaired what Victor's chaos had broken, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. Victor and his crew were behind bars, thanks to the FBI's work and the evidence I provided. Amanda was out of my life for good, and the chapter she represented was finally closed. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain. I wouldn't let anyone drag me down again. The call that started it all had changed my life forever, but in the end, it gave me something I didn't expect: closure.